The high-level general debate of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly continues on Monday as heads of state and government offer their annual addresses. Germany's center-left Social Democrats claimed victory in the federal election. The Social Democratic Party beat the Christian Democratic Union a slim margin of 1.6%. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammad Shtayyeh called for international action for the protection of Palestinians in the face of Israeli oppression and killing. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your host, Gladys Quesada. Now we begin with the news. The high-level general debate of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly continues on Monday as heads of state and government offer their annual addresses. Friday saw the high-level dialogue on energy, a collateral event that sees the participation of 100 member states and brings together heads of state and government, as well as business leaders, foundations, and international civil society and youth organizations to mobilize commitments and actions in terms of energy. In his address to the high-level debate at the UN General Assembly on Saturday, Narendra Modi reaffirmed India's commitment to democracy, highlighted its great strides in developing and manufacturing COVID-19 vaccines, and warned against countries with regressive thinking. The 76th General Debate addresses pressing issues affecting the international community, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, vaccination rollout, and preparedness ahead of future health crises. Climate change and action to tackle it are also a key feature of the discussions. The dialogues between the Venezuelan government and the sectors of the opposition resumed in Mexico on Sunday. Both parties overcame the impasse that threatened the negotiations. The delegations ensured that they will work together in order to comply with the agenda stated in the Memorandum of Understanding signed on August 13th with the mediation of Norway and with the support of the Netherlands and Russia. After the government delegation requested the Norwegian mediators for an explanation for declarations made in the framework of the UN General Assembly. The head of the government delegation, Jorge Rodriguez, confirmed that he maintains his expectations of the success of the talks.
Resume activities with the unitary platform. We hope that the meetings will be fruitful and constructive as we already have.
Is there any agreement on issues like the judicial system? And you have sent a message to Mr. James Story.
You will release news soon. Thank you.
In Colombia, the migratory crisis is worsening in the border municipality of Necoclí, where over 2,000 migrants, mostly Haitians, are waiting in makeshift tents to be able to live on the boats that will take them to the department of Chocó to continue their journey towards the U.S. Close to 2,000 people have been waiting for more than a month to leave to Chocó department. They are currently taking shelter in makeshift tents, even made of garbage bags. Many of them are waiting to buy a ticket to go, but according to the shipping companies, the tickets are already sold out until October 17th. It means the wanderers must wait longer, hence strand and gather there. The situation extends to other problems, like accumulation of garbage, and the health authorities say that the miners are having respiratory problems, diarrhea and skin rashes with no medical attention by the Red Cross, attending up to 120 people daily. The municipality has been overwhelmed and unable to attend all this population. We will provide you more details in upcoming news briefs. And we'll remain on topic. Authorities in Panama said the crisis caused by the massive presence of Haitian migrants should be treated as a regional crisis. Migration representatives pointed out that in the last few days, Panama has received a flow of migrants that is 5 times bigger than the amount agreed with Colombia. They affirmed that 72% of the people who arrive into the Central American nation claim to be residents in the neighboring countries. At the same time, the massive arrival of Haitians to Mexico continues. The situation worsens if we take into account the thousands of other Central Americans arrived to the country to reach the U.S. border. Thousands of Haitians are stranded under the bridge linking the cities of Acuña in Coahuila and Del Rio in Texas. There is also a significant number of migrants in Mexico City and thousands more waiting to be attended at the southern border. The Mexican Commission for Aid to Refugees, COMAR, reported of an exponential increase in refugee applications by foreigners of Haitian origin, most coming from Chile and Brazil. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador referred to the causes of uncontrolled migration in the region and his government's position on the regional crisis.
We don't want Mexico to be a migrants' camp. We want the problem to be faced from its root, that people are not forced to emigrate. Otherwise, we will continue holding them, putting them in shelters and not going to the root of the problems. For instance, there has been no investment in social development.
The president of Peru, Pedro Castillo, ratified that he will eliminate repressive laws against workers and reaffirmed his support to the Minister of Labor, Iber Moraví, who is besieged by the opposition, who has demanded his resignation. The Peruvian head of state met with representatives of the country's labor unions at the Lima Convention Center to respond to labor demands. During his speech, Castillo asked Minister Moraví to eliminate the repressive laws that threaten labor rights. He assured that they will provide all the conveniences to have united, firm and strong unions at national level, where no one is left behind and everyone is heard. Meanwhile, he called for unity and to consolidate the organization of the working class, while criticizing the temporary hiring modalities of employees with reduced labor rights. We'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. Germany's center-left Social Democrats have claimed a victory in the federal election. The Social Democratic Party beat the Christian Democratic Union by the slim margin of 1.6 percentage points. Social Democrats leader Olaf Scholz said he had a clear mandate to form a government, while his conservative rival Armin Laschet demands determined to fight on. In these elections, citizens were called to choose the lower house of the federal parliament, the Bundestag. Social Democrats have won 25.7% of the vote, ahead of the Christian Democratic Union, which dropped down to 24.1%. The Greens maintain their position as the third largest party, followed by the Free Democrats, the Nationalist Alternative for Germany, and the Left Party.
For us, it is quite clear that a mandate must be derived from this, and that we are now endeavoring to form a government supported by the parties that won the election. That is the SPD with a very considerable increase in votes, that is the Greens, and that is the FDP. And we will therefore also continue on this path with all efforts to work together.
And we remain on topic because Iceland briefly celebrated electing a female majority parliament before a recount showed there will still be more men than women in the chamber. The initial vote count had female candidates winning 33 seats in Iceland's 63-seat parliament, the whole thing in an election that saw centrist parties make the biggest gains. Hours later, a recount changed the outcome, leaving female candidates with 30 seats. The three parties in the outgoing coalition government, led by Prime Minister Katrín Jakobsdóttir, won a total of 37 seats in Saturday's vote, 2 more than in the last election. The center-right Independence Party took the largest share of votes, winning 16 seats, followed by the centrist Progressive Party with 13 seats, 5 more than last time, and the left-green movement with only 8 seats.
In Iceland, women have always been involved in human rights. Women have been very efficient work and in education. So I think it's just development of in the long run, basically.
So I don't think there will be a lot of change. I mean, like, all the parties have sort of gathered in the middle, and I don't know, I think it will be I don't expect lots of changes.
The Russian government stated that the possibility of a dialogue with Ukraine depends on the readiness of the Russian government to comply with the Minsk agreement. Russian Presidential Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov said that the Kiev's lack of will slows down the discussions on the implementation of the Minsk II agreement and a possible meeting of the Russian President Vladimir Putin with his Ukrainian counterpart Vladimir Zelensky. Peskov claimed that the ministers and political advisors who are dealing with this issue in the context of the Quartet of Germany, Russia, Ukraine and France are making active attempts to revive this process again. At the same time, he reminded that this impasse is connected exclusively with the Ukrainian position, as the Minsk agreement is a written document, not vague, extremely concrete and published. He also said President Putin will meet his Ukrainian counterpart if Kiev shows intentions to do so. Vietnamese Foreign Minister Bui Thanh Son met with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov during his 3-day visit to Moscow regarding bilateral cooperation. This year, both nations celebrate the 70th anniversary of bilateral diplomatic ties and also the 20th of their strategic partnership. The partnership elevated to a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2021, which includes collaboration on everything from defense to education. Economic ties go both ways since Moscow is Hanoi's largest provider of weaponry and military technology, and also Vietnam recently began production of Russia's Sputnik V vaccine. Vietnamese Foreign Minister's visit signals Hanoi's intention to strengthen existing alliances as regional tensions rise. Residents in the European state of San Marino have voted overwhelmingly to legalize abortion. With all the referendum polls counted, around 77% of voters backed the decision, while nearly 23% said no. With the results, in Interior Minister Elena Tonini has called on Parliament to translate the result into law. The move would overturn a law dating back to 1865, which has made San Marino one of the last places in Europe where abortion is completely banned. The motion, passed by voters, will allow women to voluntarily terminate their pregnancy within 12 weeks of gestation. After the 12-week mark, abortion will only be allowed if the mother's health was at risk or if fetal abnormalities could cause physical or psychological harm. Soaring natural gas prices have roiled Britain and the rest of Europe, leading to price spikes in the cost of electricity that are raising utility bills for consumers, putting pressure on energy supplies and disrupting industries. The consequences of the turmoil are unfolding every day. As factories shut down, ministers huddle with business leaders to find solutions, and idled coal burning plants are pressed into service to provide more power. The crisis became geopolitical as the United States Energy Secretary appeared to take aim at Russia, throwing suspicions that Moscow is using the gas markets to pressure Europe to sign off on the pipeline Nord Stream 2. A number of factors are playing out in the scramble for energy. Among other things, it shows that the transition from emissions causing fossil fuels like coal and natural gas toward renewable sources like wind and solar, while necessary to tackle climate change, remains a work in progress, vulnerable to glitches. In India, agricultural workers staged demonstrations, to mark 1 year of the massive protests seeking the withdrawal of the 3 agricultural laws imposed by the government. Farmers have called for a day of mobilizations and commemorative strikes this Monday as part of their protest seeking the withdrawal of the 3 agricultural laws, which they allege give power to private companies to take over the sector to the expense of smaller farmers. More than 500 agricultural organizations, as well as 40 unions, 6 state governments, and other sectors of society joined the call for a strike against the 3 agricultural laws. The strike, however, will allow all emergency and essential services establishments to work, including hospitals, medical warehouses, relief and rescue workers, as well as people attending to personal and medical emergencies, according to the organizers. In China, 2021 Sustainable Development Forum is carried out as a space to strengthen multilateralism and global cooperation. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi participated in the inauguration ceremony held in Beijing through a video conference, highlighting that the activity was an initiative of President Xi Jinping, while noting that the meeting marks a new stage of balanced growth within the framework of the international integration and cooperation, in order to advance towards the consolidation of global development and in order to face adverse situations, including those caused by COVID-19. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Sayed called for international action for the protection of Palestinians in the face of the Israeli oppression and killing, as he presides over the weekly cabinet meeting in the West Bank town of Hebron.
Condemns Israel's assassination of 5 Palestinian youth in northern Jerusalem and Jenin, and previously in Beita and everywhere else, and calls for international action for the protection of our people in the face of the Israeli killing machine. The cabinet affirms its support of President Abu Mazen's speech last Friday before the United Nations General Assembly, in which he affirmed that Palestinians have a right to live in freedom and dignity, and that Israel's disregard of the 1967 borders brings us back to the 1947 partition of the border. The continued diminishing of the geographical base for a Palestinian state brings the conflict over Palestine to square one.
Now we address other topics. Young climate activists around the world took the streets for the first worldwide youth climate change strike since before the pandemic. The Fridays for Future protests took place in over 1,000 locations globally, with young people raising their voices once again in a call for immediate action. The demonstrations that drew students, young children accompanied by parents, and others concerned about climate change together were among several similar events held around the world. Protests were carried out in New York, Berlin, Ontario, Buenos Aires, among other cities in the world. These demonstrations happened just weeks before the viral COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, United Kingdom.
We are seeing more and more frequent and more terrible extreme weather phenomena, and I believe that what is happening shows that there is a demand from the population which is going to transform to the political leaders. The youth is contributing to the fight against climate change. First of all, it is giving it a new meaning, adding a social part to it, the human rights part, because people used to associate the climate crisis with a polar bear. I think that the youth achieved to break with the image that people used to have and to understand that in reality the climate crisis is a human rights issue.
Thousands of people have been forced to leave their homes to escape rivers of lava cascading from La Palma's erupting volcano. Cumbre Vieja resumed activity after a short stop. The eruption suddenly paused on Monday morning as surface activity at the vents and the volcanic tremors ceased. Scientists stated that it was too early to determine whether this indicates the end or just a pause in the eruption, but it is better to assume that it's just a pause. Earthquakes have picked up again a bit, which suggests that magma pressure has increased underground and magma might be trying to find new pathways. During the past 24 hours, there were 17 quakes of magnitude from 2 to 3, the largest a 3.2 quake 11 kilometers south of Los Llanos de Ariane. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, authorities affirmed that recent activity at the Nyiragongo volcano is no longer a threat. The scientific director of Volcano Observatory in Goma City, Kasereka Mahinda, affirmed that the reappearance of lava in the crater of the Nyiragongo volcano is a natural sign that will minimize earthquakes in the Goma volcanic zone. These statements seek to dismiss any warming of the populations surrounding the volcano, which last May killed 32 people, destroyed hundreds of homes, and caused the displacement of tens of thousands of people, fleeing an eruption that involved the presence of toxic gases. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.